The wind howled through the barren trees, their skeletal branches scratching against the windows of the old farmhouse. It stood at the edge of Ravenswood, a small town long forgotten by the world, shrouded in mist and memories. The house was a relic from another time, its wooden walls weathered and worn, the roof sagging under the weight of countless seasons. It had been vacant for years, its silence broken only by the whisper of the wind and the faint creaks of decaying floorboards. But tonight, the silence was shattered by the sound of a car pulling into the gravel driveway, the headlights cutting through the fog. Emily Ward stepped out, her heart pounding as she looked up at the house she had once called home. She was 42 now, her auburn hair streaked with gray, her eyes lined with exhaustion. She hugged her coat tighter around her slender frame, the chill of autumn sinking into her bones. She had vowed never to return. Not after what happened. Not after she had lost him. Her son, Daniel, 8 years old, full of laughter and mischief, his blue eyes sparkling with wonder. He had vanished without a trace on a cold November evening, right in this very house. She had been in the kitchen, washing dishes, when she heard his laughter echoing from the hallway. It was his favorite game, hide and seek. She remembered calling out, teasing him, pretending she couldn't find him. She had searched every room, her voice growing frantic, her heart pounding. But he was gone. The police found nothing, no footprints, no signs of struggle. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. For years, she had haunted the streets, plastering his picture on every lamppost, every bulletin board, but no one ever saw him. No one ever found him. Emily's marriage crumbled under the weight of grief and blame. Her husband, Mark, couldn't bear to look at her, his eyes hollow, his heart shattered. He moved away, leaving her to drown in her sorrow, to live with the ghost of a child she couldn't save. She had left Ravenswood then, vowing never to return, but last week she received a letter. No return address, no signature, just 4 words scrawled in messy handwriting. Come back. He's waiting. She had torn the letter in half, her hands trembling. It was a cruel joke, a sick prank. But the words echoed in her mind, haunting her, whispering to her in the dead of night. She had to know. She had to see. Taking a deep breath, she walked up the creaking steps, her boots echoing on the wooden porch. She pushed the door open, its rusty hinges groaning in protest. The air inside was cold, stale, carrying the faint scent of dust and decay. The hallway stretched before her, dark and narrow, leading to the rooms where Daniel once played. Her footsteps were heavy, hesitant, as she moved through the house, her fingers trailing along the peeling wallpaper. Memories rushed back, sharp and cruel. Daniel's laughter, his small hands reaching for her, his voice calling her mommy. She swallowed the lump in her throat, her eyes stinging with tears. She stopped outside his bedroom, the door slightly ajar. Her heart skipped a beat as she pushed it open, the hinges creaking. The room was just as she remembered, his bed neatly made, his toys scattered on the floor, his favorite stuffed bear lying on the pillow. She stepped inside, her knees trembling. Daniel? Her voice was barely a whisper, her chest tight. Baby, are you here? Silence. The room was cold, the air heavy, suffocating. She moved to the window, her fingers brushing the faded curtains. She could almost see him there, his small body perched on the windowsill, his face pressed against the glass, waiting for his father to come home. A faint echo reached her ears, a soft, distant laugh. Her heart stopped, her blood running cold. She spun around, her eyes wide, searching the empty room. Daniel? Her voice shook, her hands trembling. Is that you? The laughter grew louder, echoing through the hallway, bouncing off the walls. It was his laugh, bright, innocent, filled with joy. Her body went rigid, her eyes wide with disbelief. It's not possible. It can't be. She stumbled into the hallway, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The laughter was all around her now, swirling through the air, wrapping around her like a cold breeze. Her heart raced, her body numb with fear and hope. Daniel, she called out, her voice breaking. Where are you? Mommy's here. The laughter stopped abruptly, the silence deafening. Her chest tightened, her eyes darting around the dimly lit hallway. Shadows danced along the walls, shifting, twisting. She took a step forward, her legs unsteady. Please. I need to see you. I need to know. A cold draft swept through the hallway, chilling her to the bone. The air grew heavy, the shadows deepening. She felt a presence behind her, the hairs on her neck standing on end. Slowly she turned around. Standing at the end of the hallway was a figure, a small boy, his back turned to her, his head bowed. Her heart stopped, her knees giving way. Daniel? Her voice was a broken whisper, tears streaming down her face. Oh God, Daniel! He didn't move, his body still, rigid. His clothes were the same ones he had worn the day he disappeared, a red sweater and blue jeans. His shoulders were hunched, his arms hanging limply at his sides. She took a step forward, her hands reaching out. Baby? It's Mommy. I'm here. I'm right here. Her voice cracked, her chest heaving. Please, look at me. Slowly he began to turn, his movements stiff, unnatural. Her heart raced, her breath catching in her throat. But as he turned to face her, a cold dread washed over her. His face was pale, hollow, his eyes dark, empty. His lips curled into a twisted smile, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. The air grew frigid, the shadows closing in around her. His voice echoed through the hallway, distorted, inhuman. I've been waiting, Mommy. A scream tore from her throat as the lights flickered, the shadows swallowing the hallway, plunging her into darkness. The laughter returned, louder, crueler, echoing around her, shaking the walls. Her body trembled, her back pressing against the wall, her knees buckling beneath her. The shadows twisted, forming shapes, faces, eyes watching her from every corner. And amidst the darkness, his voice whispered, cold and mocking, You left me. Now you're mine. The air grew heavy, pressing down on her chest, stealing her breath. Her vision blurred, her body sinking to the floor, the cold shadows wrapping around her, pulling her into the darkness. Emily awoke to darkness, her body cold and stiff, her head throbbing with pain. She was lying on the floor, her back pressed against the cracked plaster wall, the wooden boards beneath her rough and splintered. Her mouth was dry, her throat raw from screaming. Her heart pounded as she remembered. The laughter, the shadows, Daniel. She forced herself to sit up, her body trembling. The hallway was silent now, the air heavy and cold. Her eyes darted around, searching the shadows, her breath shallow and ragged. The boy was gone. The twisted smile, the hollow eyes, it was as if he had never been there at all. But the cold dread remained, lingering in the air, wrapping around her like a fog. She stumbled to her feet, her legs unsteady, her fingers brushing against the wall for support. Her head spun, her vision blurring. She could still hear his voice, echoing in her mind, taunting her. You left me. Now you're mine. Her stomach churned, her hands trembling. No, it wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the memory of his face, that terrible smile, was seared into her mind. Her heart ached, a cold knot forming in her chest. Was that really Daniel? Had he been here all along? She moved toward the stairs, her footsteps heavy, her body numb. She needed to get out of this house to escape the darkness that seemed to cling to the walls. But as she reached the top of the staircase, a voice echoed from below, soft and trembling. Emily? Is that you? Her heart skipped a beat. Mark, she gripped the banister, her knuckles white. Mark? What are you doing here? He stood at the bottom of the stairs, his shoulders hunched, his dark hair streaked with gray. His face was pale, lined with exhaustion, his eyes hollow. I saw your car outside. I didn't think you'd ever come back. His voice was rough, strained, as if he hadn't spoken in days. Emily swallowed, guilt twisting in her stomach. I got a letter. It said he was waiting. Her voice broke, tears burning her eyes. I had to see, I had to know. Mark's face tightened, his body rigid. You shouldn't have come back. This place, it's not right. It never was. He looked away, his jaw clenching. I tried to forget. I tried to move on. But he's still here, isn't he? Emily's blood ran cold. You've seen him? Mark's shoulders sagged, his eyes darkening. I hear him, in my dreams, laughing, calling out to me. I thought I was going mad. But then I got a letter, too, telling me to come back. He looked up at her, his eyes glistening. I thought, maybe if I came back, maybe I could make it stop. Emily's heart pounded, her mind spinning. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you call? Mark's face twisted with pain. I didn't think you'd believe me. I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. Not after everything." His voice cracked, his shoulders trembling. "I blamed you for losing him. I blamed you because I couldn't face the truth." Emily's chest tightened, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I blamed myself too. Every single day. I thought I failed him." Her voice broke, her body shaking. "But he's here. He never left." Mark looked up, his eyes wide with fear. "Emily, we need to leave. Now." Before she could respond, the front door slammed shut, echoing through the house. The air grew cold, the walls creaking, shadows twisting along the floor. A faint whisper floated through the air, distant, childlike. "Mommy? Daddy? Come play with me." Emily's heart stopped, her blood running cold. It was Daniel's voice, soft, innocent, filled with laughter, but beneath the sweetness was something darker, something cold and hollow. She turned to Mark, his face pale, his eyes wide with terror. "You hear it too," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's him? It's really him." Mark's face crumpled, his body trembling. "No. It's not him. It can't be. Daniel's gone. He's gone." His voice broke, his hands curling into fists. "Whatever that is, it's not our son." The laughter grew louder, echoing through the hallway, wrapping around them like a cold breeze. The air grew heavy, the shadows deepening, twisting into shapes, faces. Emily backed away, her body pressed against the wall, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "Daniel, please, show yourself." The shadows shifted, swirling together, forming the outline of a small boy at the end of the hallway. His head was bowed, his shoulders hunched, his arms hanging limply at his sides. Emily's heart raced, her body trembling. "Baby, is that you?" Mark grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her skin. "Emily, don't. It's not real. It's not him." But she pulled away, her eyes locked on the figure. "Daniel, please, look at me." The boy's head snapped up, his face pale, hollow, his eyes dark and empty. His lips twisted into a cruel smile, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. His voice was cold, echoing, distorted. "You left me. Now you're mine." Mark pulled Emily back, his body shielding hers as the shadows surged forward, cold and heavy, swirling around them. The walls creaked, the floorboards groaning under the weight of invisible footsteps. Laughter echoed from every corner, cruel and mocking. Emily's body shook, her hands clutching Mark's shirt. "He's here. He's really here." Mark's face was pale, his eyes wild with fear. "We need to get out of here. Now." He pulled her down the stairs, their footsteps echoing, the shadows following them, whispering, laughing. The front door was locked, the handle ice-cold under Mark's touch. He pulled at it, his muscles straining, but it wouldn't budge. The air grew colder, the shadows swirling around their feet, climbing up the walls, faces forming within the darkness. Faces of children, their eyes hollow, their mouths open in silent screams. Emily's back pressed against the wall, her chest heaving. Her vision blurred, the room spinning around her. The laughter grew louder, piercing, shaking the walls. Her body went cold, her legs giving way. She sank to the floor, her head in her hands, her voice breaking. "Daniel, please, come back to me." The shadows surged forward, engulfing her, cold hands gripping her arms, her legs. The laughter echoed around her, cruel and hollow, and through the darkness his voice whispered, "You left me, now you'll stay. Forever." The shadows tightened, cold and suffocating, pulling her down, deeper into the darkness. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. Her vision faded, the shadows closing in, wrapping around her like a shroud, and as the darkness consumed her, she heard his voice once more, faint and distant, echoing through the cold emptiness. "Mommy, come play with me." Emily woke to the sound of whispers, faint and echoing, like the rustle of leaves in the wind. Her body was cold, her limbs stiff and heavy, her head throbbing with pain. She opened her eyes, her vision blurred, darkness pressing in from all sides. Her hands touched cold stone, the rough surface scraping against her skin. The air was damp, musty, carrying the faint scent of decay. She was underground, buried beneath the old house, the basement. But it was different now. Colder, darker. The walls were lined with cracked stones, covered in moss and mold. Water dripped from the ceiling, forming small puddles on the dirt floor. There were no windows, no light, just shadows that danced along the walls, twisting into strange shapes. Her heart raced, panic clawing at her chest. She tried to move, but her body was weak, her legs trembling. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her head spinning. How did I get here? Where's Mark? A faint echo drifted through the darkness, distant and hollow. Mommy, come play. Her blood ran cold, her body going rigid. Daniel. She struggled to her feet, her legs shaking, her hands pressed against the cold stone wall for support. Daniel? Her voice was weak, trembling. Baby, where are you? The whisper grew louder, echoing off the walls, swirling around her. This way, Mommy, come find me. Tears burned her eyes, her heart aching. I'm coming, baby. She moved forward, her hands brushing against the damp stones, her footsteps echoing in the darkness. Her body was numb, her mind spinning. She had to find him. She had to save him. The passageway twisted and turned, narrowing, the walls pressing in on her. She stumbled over rocks, her hands scraping against the rough stone, her breath hitching in her throat. The air grew colder, the shadows darker, twisting, whispering. Faces appeared within the darkness. Pale, hollow-eyed children, their mouths open in silent screams. Emily's chest tightened, fear clawing at her. No, no, leave me alone. She pressed forward, her shoulders scraping against the narrowing walls, her body trembling. Daniel, please. Where are you? A faint light appeared at the end of the passage, flickering, cold and blue. Her heart leaped, hope surging through her. She stumbled toward it, her legs heavy, her body numb. The air grew colder, the light brighter, until she stepped into a circular chamber, its walls lined with stones carved with strange symbols. The blue light flickered from the center of the room, hovering above a small wooden box, its surface cracked and worn. But it was the figure standing beside the box that made her heart stop. A boy, his back to her, his head bowed, his shoulders hunched. He was small, frail, his body wrapped in a tattered red sweater, his curls falling over his face. Daniel, Emily cried, her voice breaking. She ran toward him, her arms outstretched. Baby, I'm here, I'm right here. He didn't move, his body stiff, rigid. The air grew colder, the shadows shifting. She reached out, her fingers brushing his shoulder, cold and hard. Her heart sank, a chill running through her. Daniel? Slowly he turned, his head snapping up, his body twisting at an unnatural angle. His face was pale, hollow, his eyes dark and empty, his lips curled into a cruel smile, his voice echoing, distorted. You left me, now you'll stay, forever. Emily stumbled back, her body trembling, her chest tight with fear. No, no, this can't be real. Her vision blurred, her heart racing. You're not real. You're not my son. His face twisted, his eyes narrowing. You left me, you didn't protect me, you didn't save me. His voice grew colder, hollow. You let him take me. You let him hurt me. Emily's knees buckled, her body sinking to the cold ground. No, I didn't know. I didn't know. Tears streamed down her face, her chest heaving. I tried to find you. I tried. Her voice broke, her body shaking. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, baby. The boy's face twisted with anger, his eyes darkening. You let him take me. You let him take all of us. His hand rose, pointing to the shadows. Look at what you did. The shadows shifted, swirling, faces forming within the darkness. Children, pale and hollow-eyed, their bodies frail and broken. Their mouths opened, echoing with cold, hollow laughter. They reached out, their fingers twisted, clawing at the air. Emily's vision swam, her body shaking. No, no, I didn't know. I didn't know. She clutched her head, her fingers digging into her scalp. Stop it, please. Make it stop. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the chamber, shaking the walls. The shadows closed in, cold and heavy, wrapping around her, pulling at her arms, her legs. She felt herself sinking, falling into the darkness, the children's laughter ringing in her ears. And then a voice broke through the chaos. A familiar, warm voice. Emily, Emily, wake up! She opened her eyes, the darkness fading, the cold receding. Mark was kneeling beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders, his face pale with fear. Emily, oh God, I thought I lost you. Her chest heaved, her vision clearing. She was back in the house, lying on the cold floor, the walls cracked and peeling. The laughter was gone, the shadows silent, but the memory lingered, cold and cruel. She looked up at Mark, her body trembling. He's here. He's really here. He's trapped, with all of them. Mark's face tightened, his jaw clenching. What are you talking about? Who's trapped? Emily's eyes filled with tears, her heart aching. Daniel? And the others, all the children who disappeared. She looked at the broken window, the shadows beyond. They're trapped, because of him, because of the man who took them. Mark's face went pale, his body going rigid. Who? Who took them? Emily's voice was a whisper, her hands shaking. The man who built this house, the man who made the box, the man who stole their souls. Her eyes widened, her voice trembling. The collector. Mark's breath hitched, his face twisting with fear. The collector, the legend, it was real? Emily nodded, her body cold. He took them, he trapped them, and now they're his, forever. Her chest tightened, her eyes darkening. Unless we set them free. The air grew cold, the shadows shifting, and from the darkness the echo of a child's laughter rang through the house, cruel and hollow, shaking the walls. Mark's face went pale, his eyes wide with horror. We need to get out of here. Now. Emily looked at the shadows, her body trembling. We can't leave him. Not again. Her voice was firm, her eyes fierce. We're bringing him home. The shadows swirled, the laughter echoing. And through the darkness, Daniel's voice whispered, cold and distant, "Come play with me. Forever." The laughter echoed through the house, cruel and hollow, shaking the walls. The air grew cold, the shadows swirling, twisting into faces, children with hollow eyes and twisted smiles. Their laughter was chilling, unnatural, echoing off the cracked plaster walls, filling the air with a cold dread. Emily stood in the center of the room, her body trembling, her chest tight. Her eyes darted to the dark corners, to the shadows that danced along the floor. She could feel them, cold, hollow, watching her with eyes that weren't there. But she couldn't run. Not this time. Mark grabbed her arm, his face pale with fear. Emily, we have to get out of here. This place, it's cursed, it's evil. His voice shook, his fingers digging into her skin. We can't save him, not from this. Emily pulled away, her shoulders tense, her eyes fierce. No, I won't leave him. Not again. Her voice was firm, her body rigid. I lost him once. I won't lose him again. Mark's face twisted with pain, his eyes wide with desperation. Emily, he's gone. Whatever's here, it's not him, it's something else, something dark. His voice broke, his shoulders sagging. We can't bring him back. Emily's chest tightened, her vision blurring with tears. I have to try. I have to save him. Her voice cracked, her heart aching. He's my son. The laughter grew louder, echoing through the hallway, bouncing off the walls. The air grew colder, the shadows twisting, swirling. A figure appeared at the end of the hallway. A small boy, his head bowed, his shoulders hunched. His body was frail, wrapped in a tattered red sweater, his curls falling over his face. Emily's heart stopped, her body trembling. Daniel? Her voice was a broken whisper, tears streaming down her face. Oh God, Daniel. Mark stepped back, his face pale, his eyes wide with horror. No, that's not him. That's not our son. Emily shook her head, her hands trembling. It is. It's him. He's trapped. He's been trapped here all this time. Her voice broke, her chest heaving. We have to save him. We have to set him free. The boy looked up, his head snapping up at an unnatural angle. His face was pale, hollow, his eyes dark and empty. His lips curled into a cruel smile, his voice echoing, distorted. You left me, now you'll stay, forever. Emily's knees buckled, her body sinking to the floor. Her heart pounded, her breath coming in shallow gasps. No. This can't be real. But the pain in her chest, the cold dread wrapping around her, told her it was. Mark pulled her back, his body shielding hers. Emily, it's not him. It's a spirit, a demon, something evil. His voice was tight, his body trembling. We need to get out of here, now. The boy's face twisted, his eyes narrowing. You let him take me. You let him hurt me. You did this. You let us all die. His voice grew colder, hollow. You're the reason we're here. The shadows surged forward, cold and heavy, wrapping around them, whispering, laughing. The faces appeared again, children with hollow eyes and twisted smiles, their hands reaching out, their fingers long and sharp. Emily's body shook, her vision blurring. No, I didn't know. Her voice cracked, her hands clutching Mark's shirt. Please, Daniel, please. The boy's face softened, his eyes shimmering with tears. "Mommy, help me." His voice was small, trembling, filled with fear. "I'm scared. I'm so scared." Emily's heart broke, her body trembling. "I'm here, baby, I'm here." She pulled away from Mark, her hands outstretched. "I'm coming. I'll save you." Mark grabbed her arm, his face twisted with fear. "No, it's a trick. It's not him." Emily tore free, her eyes locked on her son. "I don't care. I have to try." She stepped forward, her body trembling, her hands reaching out. "Daniel, take my hand. Come back to me." The boy's face twisted, his mouth opening wide, his eyes hollow, empty. A scream echoed from his lips, cold and piercing, shaking the walls. The shadows surged forward, cold and heavy, wrapping around Emily's arms, her legs. She felt herself sinking, falling, the darkness pulling her down. Mark's voice broke through the chaos, his body crashing into hers, his arms wrapping around her. "No, I won't lose you too." His grip was strong, his voice breaking. "I won't let him take you." Emily's body trembled, her eyes locked on her son. "Daniel, please, please come back." Her voice cracked, her heart breaking. "Please, I love you." The boy's face softened, his eyes wide with fear. His lips moved, his voice faint, trembling. "Mommy, help me. I'm scared." The shadows surged, the faces of the children twisting, screaming. The boy's body shook, his hands reaching out. "Help me, please." Emily's heart ached, her chest tight. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. "I'm here. I'm right here." Her voice was soft, trembling. "I love you. I'll always love you." A tear slid down the boy's cheek, his face softening. "I love you, Mommy." His body shimmered, his eyes closing. The shadows pulled at him, his body sinking into the darkness. "I have to go. I have to go now." Emily's chest tightened, her body trembling. "No, please, don't leave me, please." Her voice broke, her tears falling. "I can't lose you again." The boy's face was peaceful, his lips curling into a soft smile. "You never lost me. I was always here." His voice was a whisper, faint and distant. "Goodbye, Mommy." The shadows surged, his body sinking, fading into the darkness. The cold receded, the air growing warmer, lighter. The faces of the children shimmered, their eyes softening, their mouths curling into smiles. Their bodies faded, their laughter echoing, sweet and innocent, filled with joy. The shadows broke apart, the darkness lifting. The room was warm, bright, the air filled with light. Emily sank to the floor, her body trembling, her chest heaving, her heart ached, her tears falling. Mark wrapped his arms around her, his body trembling. "He's gone. He's really gone." His voice broke, his shoulders shaking. "We lost him." Emily clutched his shirt, her body shaking. "No, we set him free." Her voice was soft, trembling. "We set them all free." The air grew warm, the sunlight streaming through the broken window, washing over them. And through the light, a soft whisper echoed, faint and distant. "I love you, Mommy." Emily closed her eyes, her heart aching, her body trembling. She felt his presence, warm and gentle, wrapping around her like a hug. A smile broke through her tears, her chest tight with love. "I love you too forever."